All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA exam practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A researcher observes that a child consistently completes a puzzle after receiving praise. The researcher concludes that this pattern is not random, but instead is the result of a predictable relationship between the behavior and the reinforcement provided. What assumption is most illustrated here? Whenever dealing with assumption questions or dimension questions, you want to be as precise as possible because a lot of assumptions, a lot of dimensions have some overlap. In this case, we have a situation where a researcher sees a child completing a puzzle after receiving praise. They say it is not random, but it is predictable. Now, immediately, when we see things like predictability, lawfulness, not random, the assumption we want to think about is determinism. Behavior is determined. Behavior is not random. It doesn't happen for no reason. It's not unpredictable. That's why we, as behavior specialists, can do what we do, because we can predict behavior. We can understand that behavior happens for a reason. So, what assumption is illustrated by the idea that this behavior has a predictable relationship and it's not random? A, selectionism. Selectionism is selection by consequences, where behaviors are going to persist based on the consequences or even not persist based on the consequences. And while there is some consequence talk here in the form of receiving praise, the focus is not on what behavior is being selected over another behavior. We're talking specifically about one single response that is predictable. So what we're doing here is looking at the deterministic nature of behavior. The idea that it is not random, it's lawful, is determinism. Empiricism has to do with observability and observation. We're not talking about necessarily the researcher's observations. We're talking about his conclusions. Yes, the researcher observes the child completing the puzzle, but the focus is the conclusion that the pattern is not random, but predictable. And that's the difficult part about the assumptions and the dimension questions. What is most highlighted in the question? And then pragmatism has to do with the practicality of an intervention, and we're using an intervention based on its effectiveness or perceived effectiveness. We're not discussing being pragmatic here. The assumption most illustrated is B, determinism. Yes, we talk briefly about observation, but that is not the focus. The focus is the non-random aspect and the predictable aspect of the relationship between the behavior and the consequence. An analyst conducts an FBA for a student engaging in disruptive behavior during class. Data show that the behavior prevents the student from accessing learning opportunities. The analyst also notes that behavior is much less disruptive at home, where the student has more frequent breaks. What is the most socially significant goal for this specific situation? Now, when we talk about socially significant, we're talking about meaningful change. What is going to lead to a meaningful change in a person's life? In this case, this specific situation, what goal should we target? What do we know so far? We know the analyst is conducting an assessment for disruptive behavior in class. Data show it's preventing the student from learning, which is a big issue. So immediately, if we're thinking socially significant, we're going to start thinking, well, we don't want the student to not have access to these learning opportunities. We're likely going to want to address this disruptive behavior. Additionally, it shows that behavior is much less disruptive at home, and the student gets more frequent breaks. So given the fact that behavior is much worse in the classroom, much less worse at home, our focus is going to be where we're going to receive or provide the most meaningful change. Now, let's look at A. Is reducing disruptions in the classroom setting the most socially significant goal for this specific situation? A looks pretty good, right? That's where disruption is happening the most. It's having the largest impact in terms of learning opportunities. A seems very socially significant. Is B more socially significant? Is reducing disruptions in the home setting better than in the classroom setting? Well, no, it doesn't appear behavior is all that disruptive at home. And remember, each question is occurring in a vacuum. So we're comparing B to A in the context of the situation. C, develop a general reduction plan for all settings. Now, if the behavior is much worse in one setting, then a general reduction plan for all settings seems like a waste of time and resources because the plan is going to be generalized across all settings. Whereas if we focus on the most disruptive behaviors, we're likely to see much more meaningful change. D, teach self-management to the student to improve skill acquisition. The problem isn't skill management or self-management, right? It's the disruption. Once we handle the disruption during class, maybe self-management is our next option. But given our information, we need to target that disruption during class. Why? It's preventing access to learning opportunities. So all this information says the most socially significant goal would be to reduce disruptions in the classroom setting. A community program is designed to increase recycling rates by placing clear labeled bins in public spaces. Data show that recycling behavior increases significantly and persists across various locations and populations through this program. Additionally, the procedures are written in a way that can be replicated by other communities. Which dimension of ABA is least clearly addressed in this scenario? So we have a dimension question and a least question, meaning we're given 4 options and we want to determine what option has the least amount of support given our information. Now, what do we know? We know the program is designed to increase recycling. They're placing labeled bins in public spaces. Data show recycling behavior does increase significantly and persist across locations and populations. Additionally, procedures are written in a way that can be replicated by other communities. So if we look at A, you should immediately recognize A, technological, as this part where procedures are written in a way that can be replicated. Technological is a very straightforward dimension. We are writing things and designing things and documenting things in a way that can be replicated. And that's what's being done here. B, applied. Applied has to do with meaningful and socially significant behavior. And recycling is a good thing. So recycling behavior in this community is very applied. It's going to make meaningful change in this community. What about C, conceptually systematic? Now, you want to be very careful with conceptually systematic. When we talk about conceptually systematic, we're thinking, are we using ABA principles and terminologies? All we know here is recycling bins replaced, or recycling bins replaced with clear labels in public spaces. There's no specifics about any ABA concepts. So there's not much support that we know or don't know if these programs were in fact conceptually systematic. We do know they were effective, right? Recycling behavior increased significantly and generalized. So that's fantastic. The dimension of ABA that's the least clearly addressed, however, is conceptually systematic. We can't say for sure that it was or was not conceptually systematic given this limited amount of information. Tim is moving out of state and needs to transfer all cases to other behavior analysts. Tim reviews each client's progress, writes a detailed summary of interventions, schedules a meeting with the new analyst, and makes it a point to assist families as much as possible. What critical step is Tim taking in this scenario? So let's think about Tim's behavior. What is Tim doing? He's moving and he's transferring his cases. What is he doing because he has to transfer cases? Well, he's looking at client progress, writing summaries, collaborating with analysts, and assisting families. Tim is doing a very good job of ensuring continuity of services and transferring cases. There might be a time, for whatever reason, in Tim's case, he's moving, that you may need to transfer a client to someone else. In that case, you don't just get to get rid of the client and move on. You need to assist in that transfer as much as possible. So what step is Tim taking? A, documenting caregiver training. He is assisting families, but it doesn't note anywhere where Tim is specifically highlighting or documenting caregiver training. B, avoiding dual relationships with the new providers. Not necessarily discussing dual relationships here, right? He is scheduling meetings with those new analysts. We know nothing about those relationships, however. C, ensuring a smooth transition with minimal disruption to client services. Absolutely. Got progress reports. We have summaries. He's collaborating. He's assisting. Tim is doing a great job with the transition. D, providing proof of experimental control over client progress. Just because he's summarizing what has happened does not mean he's demonstrating any sort of experimental control. The step Tim is taking here is ensuring that smooth transition with minimal disruption to client services. A teacher is working with a student on learning animal names. The teacher first teaches the student to match spoken animal names to pictures of animals. Later, during a classroom reading activity, the student is able to match the written word dog to the picture of a dog, even though this skill was not directly taught. What behavioral outcome does this scenario illustrate? Let's think about the behavior outcome that is described here. What do we know about the scenario? We know the teacher is teaching animal names. The teacher teaches the student to match spoken names to pictures. Then, during a classroom activity, the student matches the word to the picture. We have a situation where a student is matching, right? That's the behavior. The behavior is matching. In one case, the student is taught to match spoken names to pictures. In another case, the student matches a written name to a picture without teaching. So what is occurring here? A, response generalization. With response generalization, we have multiple responses occurring in the presence of a stimulus. The only response here is matching, even though in one case matching happens with spoken to picture, and in one case written to picture, it is still matching. So we're not generalizing responses. What about stimulus generalization? With stimulus generalization, we have that same response to multiple stimuli. In this case, we are matching, but still pictures of dogs, pictures of animals. We're not necessarily taking that matching to other stimuli. Emergent relations, however, occurs when a new skill appears that wasn't taught, thanks to a skill that was taught prior. This is very similar to stimulus equivalence and transitivity. That's what's happening here. The student is taught to match spoken to pictures. Now they're matching written to pictures, and they're not being directly taught. And then the maintenance occurs when teaching occurs, then teaching stops, but the skill persists. This skill was not taught, therefore we are not looking at maintenance. What happened here was emergent relations, where this new skill developed thanks to the prior teaching of another skill. Thanks for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. We'll see you soon.